Hi, welcome to the Return Homestead. Today I'm on a search to find a fluffy keto pancake. Now I've made paleo keto pancakes in the past. Most of them are made with coconut flour and or almond flour, and they tend to make them pretty heavy. So now I'm trying 3 different recipes, and each one's very different, to try to come up with a fluffy pancake. I don't really expect it to take the place of your normal pancakes, but I would like it less heavy. Now, we have been under a winter storm warning for quite a while, and we are covered with snow. We got about a foot a couple days ago. It's still on the ground. We finally made it above freezing today. We also have snow coming tonight. So if you hear a popping noise, I'm not getting shot at, that's the fireplace. So I've got a fire rolling in the fireplace, and the hemlock that you might have seen Mike take down pops quite a bit. So that's what you're hearing. The recipe calls for a 1/4 cup, which is a half a stick of butter, but it calls for unsalted, and I don't ever buy unsalted butter. The rule of thumb is for every stick of butter you use salted, you're going to take a 1/4 teaspoon of salt out of the recipe so you're not doubling it up. So the recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of butter, but it also calls for a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So because I'm using half a stick of butter, I'm going to cut my 1/4 teaspoon down by half, and I'm only going to put 1/8, which is just a little over a pinch. Okay, so my butter is softened, and to that I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of heavy cream. Now these are called coconut flour pancakes, and I got them from lowcarbyum.com. It calls for a packet of stevia. I don't really care for this. It has erythritol in it, but I never follow a recipe, but in order to be fair, I'm trying to follow this to a T. So I'll put in a packet of stevia, which has erythritol in it. And then it calls for 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla and 3 eggs. So I have my eggs and vanilla here. And I'm going to blend this up. Okay, if you've never cooked with coconut flour before, it's very different than regular flour. It absorbs extremely fast. This calls for a 1/4 cup of coconut flour and 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. And I have that right here. So I'm going to blend this in. Now the recipe says that if it's too thick, you can add an extra egg. I don't see that this is too thick. So each one makes a 2-inch diameter pancake. Like I said, 2 pancakes is 6 grams of carbs, only 3 net because of the fiber that you have. So that's recipe number 1. Now for recipe number 1, that needs to set for 15 to 35 minutes according to the directions. Like I said, coconut flour is very different. than regular flour. So we'll move on to number 2. Number 2 is called almond coconut pancakes. And this recipe came from wholesomeyum.com. And it uses 1 cup of almond flour, which I have in the bowl, a 1/4 cup of coconut flour. It also uses a teaspoon of baking powder. Now this recipe calls for 5 eggs, which is here in the bowl, and 1½ teaspoons of vanilla. Instead of butter, it's using avocado oil. I'm using heavy cream, and there's 1/3 cup in here, plus 1/4 cup of avocado oil. Again, you can use any oil of your choice. I wouldn't use the olive because olive's got a very strong taste. So it needs to be a neutral oil. And then to this, I'm going to go ahead and add my 5 eggs and my vanilla. Before I mix it, I need to put my pinch of salt in. And it has 3 net carbs, 6 carbs total. So each pancake, it says, should be 3 inches in diameter. So recipe number 2 needs to be cooked in a hot oil pan, as you do with most pancakes. But on this recipe, you need to cover it with a lid. This is where they claim that the pancakes become fluffy. So that's number 2. All right, and the last recipe, recipe number 3, is called almond flour pancakes. It makes 8 servings, has 3.7 total carbs, 1.7 net carbs, and this came from Keto Focus. In the bowl, I have 1 tablespoon of butter. Now, it calls for unsalted butter. I only have salted, so remember, I'm going to cut my salt down. So I have 1½ cups of almond flour. It calls for 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and I'm just going to put a pinch. It calls for 2 eggs, which I have here, and a teaspoon of vanilla, 1/4 cup of heavy cream, and 2 tablespoons of nut milk. So whether it's cashew, almond, whatever nut milk you're using, and that'll go in. And then it calls for 1 tablespoon of sweetener. I'm going to be using monk fruit with allulose, and that'll get mixed in. Now this recipe seems to be a little thick, so I'll probably thin it down just a little bit. I know it's not a fair comparison, but this is more like to me this is too thick for pancakes. So I'm going to add a little extra milk. And it could be that my whipping cream is very thick, so I'm just going to add a little bit at a time to see if I can't thin that down. It still looks pretty thick to me, and I think I'm ending up adding about another 1/4 cup of cream. So if they don't turn out fluffy, it's not the recipe, it's me, because this is just really thick for pancakes for me. So, and that would be number 3. So I'm already thinking that this recipe needs a little extra in it. 1½ cups of almond flour to 1/4 cup of heavy cream plus 2 tablespoons. Seems to be a little dry, but we'll try. I'm not going to add any more. We'll see what happens. And to be fair, I'm going to go ahead and cook them all with a lid because it will encourage your pancakes to fluff up. So now I'm going to get these cooked up. So now that the coconut flour pancakes have set for about 30 minutes, it really does feel fluffy, so I'm hoping that it is. You're going to put it in a hot oiled skillet, and all I have in here is lard. It says about 2 inches in diameter. Obviously, that's a little bigger. So now that the coconut flour pancakes have set for 25 to 30 minutes, they already feel fluffy. I don't know if they're going to be or not. This will make 4 servings, and each serving is 2. So you should get 8 pancakes out of this. You're going to put it in a hot skillet, oiled, and I'm going to cover it to see if we can't get them to fluff up. So this one here is the almond coconut pancakes. This makes 12 pancakes, and I think I told you 6 in a serving. That's incorrect. It's 2 pancakes, 3 inches in diameter, and this makes 6 servings. So with 3 net carbs per serving, you get 2 3-inch diameter pancakes. Now this one also gets covered. Now that the second ones have finished cooking, and they said it's very important to leave the lid on. Obviously it makes a few more pancakes, but it was a bigger recipe. This is the third one, called almond flour pancakes by Keto Focus. I added extra cream to this, and as you can see, it is still very thick. I will do one to see how it cooks up. But I think that this recipe needs either more milk or an extra egg. I don't know. I'm going to give them the full challenge to see if it will cook fine. I'm putting the lid on, and I'll do one like that, but honestly I think this needs either another egg or more cream. It's just way too thick. So I ended up adding an extra 1/4 cup of cream and an extra egg. Very thick. And I'll see what the difference is. As you can see, it's still pretty thick. Now you'll have to add, if you do what I just did, you'll have to add an extra carb for the egg. And you'll have to add the extra carbs for the 1/4 cup of cream that I added. So that'll change your carb count a bit. So no pancake would be good if you didn't have syrup. So what I have here is a blackberry syrup, and basically all it is 1 cup of blackberries that I had in the freezer from our harvest this last summer, 1 cup of water, and 1 cup of, it wasn't quite a cup of the monk fruit allulose, because to me that would be too sweet, but it's usually 1 part water, 1 part fruit, and 1 part sweetener, whether it's sugar or honey, whatever you're using. And you cook that for a while till it starts to thicken. Once it starts thickening, you're going to add 1 tablespoon of arrowroot powder or cornstarch, whichever one you're using. Now remember, you have got to count the carbs in this. So blackberries and blueberries are very low in carbs. Most berries are. But there is carbs in the monk fruit allulose. There's a few. And there is carbs in the arrowroot powder as well as cornstarch. And you want to add your arrowroot or your cornstarch to the water. You don't want to add it to a hot mixture. If you add it to a hot mixture, it'll be lumpy. This is not lumpy. I don't know if you can see this, but it's fairly thin. So you're going to need to add your carbs for this. Now, this is the first pancake I made, and I'm going to put a little bit of syrup on it. It's got butter. and we're going to try it. Did I find a pancake that will satisfy people's craving for pancakes? The syrup is really good. The pancake to me is still heavy, so that wouldn't do it for me. This pancake is also pretty eggy. It tastes like pancakes. It's just kind of heavy for me. So we'll try the next one. The second recipe was for almond coconut pancakes. This one looks a little more fluffy. That one's good. That to me tastes more like a pancake. It's heavier than what a normal pancake would be like, but it's very buttery flavored. Could be the butter I put on top, but it is lighter than this one. And the final one is the one that I altered because it was just way too thick. I did make one of them with just a little added cream to it, and it pretty much just crumbled. So I don't know, maybe I got the recipe wrong, I don't know, but I added an extra egg and a 1/4 cup of cream. Let's see how this one does. This one's called Fluffy Keto Pancakes. Let's see if it is. That one wouldn't do it for me either. If I were to pick from these three, it'd be number 2. This one is the most pancake-like, and it would probably cure. The one thing that I see online is people complaining that they don't want to eat eggs every day for breakfast. They would prefer to have something different. This recipe would probably cure a pancake craving, but it's still not quite there. And I don't know that I'll ever find it like that just because of the heaviness of the flours that you're using. But this one is more like a pancake you'd be used to eating. So I would do this one again. The other two, they weren't my favorite. Okay, I already gave my opinion of them. The first one is coconut flour.
Coconut flour.
And the blackberry syrup is a made-up recipe.
It's kind of gritty.
That would be your coconut flour.
It's not bad. It tastes like a pancake. I mean, you can taste the coconut and you can feel the kind of the crunch of the coconut, which is kind of nice. It tastes very much like a pancake. Texture's not quite right.
It's not. Okay, the second one is almond flour pancakes.
Almond flour. Now I'm expecting this one to be much heavier.
No, let me
Not
get
bad.
that right. That one is almond coconut pancakes.
So this is a mix between the almond and coconut.
Yes. Yeah. I believe so.
Yep, I can still get the coconut in there. I can taste it.
That's almond coconut pancakes.
So the almond coconut has a flavor just like the coconut. So you can taste the coconut in there. It's got a really nice texture as far as the crunch of the coconut is concerned. It's kind of like having nuts in your pancakes. The almond flour made for a pancake that is much closer to a pancake made with flour, unlike the coconut one over here.
Okay.
And then just coconut flour is this last one?
Almond flour.
Or almond
only.
flour. It's like I've always thought with the almond flour, it's not totally dissimilar from pancakes made with regular flour. But almond flour is denser, it's heavier, and pancakes tend to come out drier. It's really hard to get a moist pancake from almond flour. They come out really dry and heavy. It's more like eating a biscuit than it is eating a pancake.
So which one would you pick?
The one that's the closest to pancakes is the mixture, both the almond and coconut flour.
And that was my thought exactly. What about the blackberry syrup?
The blackberry syrup is delightful. It's very yummy. I don't know how you made that up, but make it again.
It was easy.
Very nice.
1 part water, 1 part fruit, 1 part monk fruit.
Oh,
Very easy. And I added a little bit of vanilla. Then you thicken it with arrowroot.
very nice.
It was good. Does this satisfy a pancake?
Does this
hankering?
satisfy a pancake hankering? Yes. What I'm craving when I want to eat pancakes is the flavor of the pancake. I like that yeasty, starchy flavor of the bread that cooks up on a pancake, and the topping. I don't care if it's honey, maple syrup, jam of any type or flavor. Anything sweet goes on a pancake, and that's usually what I'm after, is I want something sweet. So these pancakes work perfectly for that. Every single one of these provides a vehicle for you to put a sweet syrup on top of and give you that little bit of sweetness. But as far as pancake satisfaction, definitely the mixture of both the coconut and almond flour.
Now, do you find any of them fluffy?
This one seems fluffy when you touch it, right? When I put my fork on it, it feels fluffy, but as soon as you cut into it and start bringing it to your mouth, you realize it's not fluffy. It's very dense, it's very dry. It doesn't have that light fluffy feeling that you love from pancakes. This one is very close to being fluffy. So it's got lots of airiness to it, and the coconut in there helps to give a little extra fat, I'm guessing, and that helps to kind of soften it up so it's not as heavy as straight almond flour.
Well, I think I'm still on the search for a fluffier pancake.
I think so. This is not exactly flour.
No.
It's close, but then again, this may be as close as you can get.
It's possible because you can't use flour
Yeah.
and not have carbs.
There is nothing in this world that is like flour except flour. And yes, there are other grains that can be ground into a flour. None of them have the same gluten load that wheat does, and that's why we use it to make bread and pancakes, because it works so perfectly for that.
So I'm going to consider this a somewhat success, and number 2 was my favorite. But I still think I need to look for another recipe.
Still look for another recipe. Definitely a success, because I just got home from work and I've got pancakes ready to eat when I walk through the door. Perfect.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that it was a help to you. If you have a pancake recipe or some kind of a breakfast recipe that you might be using for breakfast or whatever meal, a lot of people don't like eggs. They all have a very eggy taste. But if you don't like to eat just eggs, which me, bacon and eggs for breakfast, that's the perfect meal. But this one might be something that you could switch over to and eat this instead of just eggs to break up the monotony that some people find a keto or paleo diet to be. I don't find it monotonous, but this is a nice switch. I will put the recipe for number 2 in the description. The other 2 weren't my favorite. This one was more like it if you're interested. If you want one of the other 2, leave a note in the comments down below, and I'll try to get those to you. I hope this video was a help to you. If you're looking for something different other than eggs for breakfast or a hamburger patty, maybe this will be it for you. If it is, let me know down below in the comments. And until I see you next time, thank you and God bless. Bye-bye.